Hi, my name is Doug Fields, and I'm one of the co-founders of DownloadYouthMinistry.com, and I'm a 30-year veteran youth pastor who's just excited to be with you for a few minutes to talk about something that's really dear to my heart. And first off, as I always do, I just want to thank you for taking some time to learn more about youth ministry and develop your heart and skills as you serve the teenagers that God has entrusted to your care, so thank you. Today I want to talk about you as a youth pastor or as a volunteer, a small group leader, whatever you are, even a parent of a teenager. Basically, if your life intersects with a teenage life, I want you to consider your role in the discipleship process and helping move that teenager from simply being a youth group attendee to becoming more of a student leader, somebody who's serving. And let me make it real clear from the beginning. There's no magic formula or pixie dust that a youth worker can sprinkle on a teenager to, help him or her develop into a youth leader. I'm sorry, I wish there was. If we ever discover that, we'll give it to you and make it real cheap. But until then, I really believe that there are some intentional actions that you and I can take to actually help teenagers better understand and embrace leadership. And I'm recording this video just a couple weeks after our annual student leadership conference that I do for teenagers all over the country. And I'm a little more amped than normal because I've just seen lights go on when it comes to this area of faith development in teenagers. So let me walk you through a few things. First step for youth workers is really that we need to broaden our definition of what leadership is. See, so often we fall into the ways of culture and we follow what they define as a leader, which are often these descriptors: extrovert, charismatic, dynamic, they're good in front of crowds, they're outgoing, they're fun, they're magnetic. You get the point. And while I wouldn't dismiss these as helpful characteristics for a leader, I surely wouldn't use them to identify potential leaders within your ministry or small group. Because as followers of Jesus, we need to embrace the biblical definition of leadership, the one that Jesus taught his very followers. And that definition is very different than the ones that we often use to vote teenagers into positions of leadership, especially in the public school setting, which is often we select the cute and fun and popular. They become the captains of the cheer squad or the student body president. But as people of faith, we need to be looking at something deeper than that. See, when we broaden our definition of leadership and we align it more closely to the words of Jesus, our potential audience for finding student leaders, it will dramatically change. In Matthew chapter 20, specifically verse 26, we read that Jesus says this: "But among you it should be different. Whoever wants to be great among you must be your servant." And in some translations, that word great is actually replaced with the word leader. If you want to become a leader, you must be a servant. What I love about this verse is that Jesus doesn't reject greatness. He just redefines it. He says, you want to be great? You want to be a leader? Fabulous. Then you've got to serve. Now, what if you and I looked at our youth ministries, and maybe even more specifically within your smaller group, and you asked yourself, who are the teenagers who seem to have a more natural leaning towards service and helping and humility? And you start there. You notice their actions and you actually begin to think as a leader, I wonder who that teenager might become if he or she was challenged to be a leader within our ministry. Please, I encourage you to deeply consider this definition of leadership. A leader is one who serves. So once you see this, the next step that we need to do as adults is to help teenagers envision their leadership potential. You actually use what I would call intentional words. I try to paint a verbal picture of what I envision in a teenager's life. And I think the reason that this is my default leadership development action is because it's what my youth pastor did to me. When I was a teenager, Jim shocked me with these words. He said, "Doug, I think God has great plans for you as a leader. I don't know what they are, but I know you're going to be a leader who God uses." See, Jim didn't have the gift of prophecy. He was actually just being encouraging. And he understood that there's power in some well-timed and genuine words. And he knew that these would be impressionable to a teenager. His words actually became a visual portrait of who I could become and what I could do. He painted potential within his words. He saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself. So let's get practical and let's turn this to you. Can you just envision yourself putting a caring arm around one of your students and saying something like, you know, I've been watching you at youth group, and I've got to tell you that you have an amazing heart. I love the way you go out of your comfort zone to serve those who are new and shy and unconnected. See, I believe that God can use that type of heart for His purposes. It's just a simple statement like that. Or how about something like this? You say, you know, I've noticed how comfortable you are in serving in the small ways. You're always the last to leave, and you're picking up trash and you're stacking chairs. All your friends have already raced out of here to be in the first in line at Chick-fil-A, you know, after youth group, and I really appreciate those actions. And as odd as it sounds, that's the type of servanthood that God uses to impact others. Now, let's go to Chick-fil-A and join those guys. I'll buy you a spicy chicken combo meal. Yeah, we're not sponsored by Chick-fil-A. I just had it for lunch, so it's on my mind. But whatever it is you choose to say, you don't just say it once. No, you repeat it, you rephrase it, you return to similar but different words. I mean, essentially, there are several ways to say the same thing. So you let that teenager know that you are sincere and you're excited about their future. The intention isn't for this to be forced or programmed or insincere, but you look towards those who are serving, and then you just simply begin to paint a potential for what they can envision and move toward. See, one of the roles that we have as significant adults in a young life is to help them see what could be, and then we make it known, and it can become a life-changing action. Not too long ago, I had lunch with a friend, and I would describe this person as a newer friend, but over lunch, he looked me right in the eyes and he said something really powerful. He said, Doug, I've listened to you teach over the last year. And I said, I've really listened to you. I've taken notes. I've watched your skills, and I really believe you could be, and then he went on to paint this beautiful picture. He went on to affirm me with what he believed I could do with these new messages that have been brewing within me. And I left that lunch feeling like $1,000,000. Now, you know, I also left having spent $25 on lunch, but nonetheless, I left totally empowered. And I'm an old man. Okay, I'm in my 50s. His words left me inspired and motivated. Now just imagine the power of your words directed at a teenager. So here's the question to consider. How are you going to enter into that teenager's life and look for what could be in them? I want to encourage you to begin asking God to give you eyes to see their potential, because potential breeds hope, and potential breeds change and adventure, and it also changes you too. See, I'll tell you what happens to me. When I'm not focused on this and I'm not seeing the potential in teenagers, my youth ministry tends to become, well, more routine. I find myself defining teenagers in terms of their problems rather than their potential. And I'll say things like, or think things like, oh, that's the kid who's always late and, you know, snickers with his buddy during my teaching time. Or, oh, that's the girl with the, you know, high maintenance mom who has a squeaky voice and, you know, gives me creepy looks. I want to be the type of leader who sees it in a teenager, who says it, who inspires it, and then follows up on it. Okay? So here's the progression of what we've talked about so far. It's real simple. One, as leaders, we've got to broaden our definition of what a leader is. Two, we've got to paint a picture of who they can become. And now, three, we need to point them towards specific serving opportunities. Okay, that's the last thing. Just point them towards specific serving opportunities. Teenagers need to taste serving. They need to do something with their life that is really making a difference, and they're more than capable of succeeding in the service opportunities that we identify and direct them towards. I think a common hurdle that keeps them from service is that we just don't take the time to identify those specific opportunities for them. I'll give you an example. When I my kids were growing up, when my own children were small, I had the opportunity to coach their sports teams until they got into high school. And as a coach, one of the things I learned with kids is that they may have thought they were a specific type of athlete and I only play shortstop, or a parent wanted their kid to be the quarterback. But the bottom line to a good coach is figuring out where they actually were really good, what position they were good at and what position they enjoyed playing. And then you give them the freedom to play that position to discover that they actually are good in that. And I believe that same principle transfers to our youth ministry. The teenagers that you were entrusted to care for, they need playing time. They need to experiment. They need to step across the line and move from sitting to serving. That's it. You just got to get them serving somewhere. Whatever need you have in your ministry, you just take that need and then turn it into a service opportunity that a teenager can fill. I like to think of the term, what I call a service funnel. So it goes like this, service funnel. And it's just a simple visual image that I think it's helpful for people to grasp. The funnel has a wide opening at the top, and then it narrows at the bottom. And at the top are services that I would describe as entry-level service opportunities. And then as you move toward the bottom of the funnel, the opportunities become more time-consuming and risky and sacrificial. And then the challenge for us as youth workers is to identify these opportunities, to make them known, and then to start casting vision for teenagers to get in the game, to get off the bench and start playing with service. When my own son was a 19-year-old college freshman, after the first semester, he left college and he went to serve in Kenya, Africa for 7 months. He worked with orphan children who were living on the streets and who were barely surviving. They were sniffing glue to numb their pain from hunger and being cold. Just one semester into college, and he abandoned the safety of his college plan because he felt like God had called him to do something radical with his life. See, that type of sacrifice and time and risk, that's at the bottom of the funnel. And I'm convinced that he was able to do that at 19 because when he was in junior high and he was 13, he was offered to play the drums and serve in the band. When he was 14, he was offered to serve in the children's ministry. When he was 15, he was invited to be a part of student leadership. See, my point is that every year he was given the opportunity to experiment with several top-of-the-funnel serving opportunities. Serving was a value that was connected to leadership and it was connected to spiritual growth, and he heard it over and over. His volunteer small group leaders cast vision that he had more to offer as a teenager than just to come to youth group and sit and be entertained. And they challenged him to lead through service rather than to be, leading through a microphone. And you can do the same thing with the teenagers that God has entrusted to your care. And I hope you will, because I'm convinced that there's a teenager who's just waiting in your youth group for someone to call him off the bench and put him into the game. And I hope you'll begin praying in that direction. Thanks for that type of leadership.